Hello, and welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, powered by Analyst Investors. I'm your host, David Olivencia, co-founder of Analyst Investors, and a passionate advocate for leveraging innovation and technology to drive success. Let's get started. This is Exponential Growth. I also want to give gratitude to Salvi Media. They're the founding sponsor of the podcast. They're a premier executive content agency dedicated to crafting exceptional content and strategies that elevate companies' brands and their executives. They're creators of the Emmy Award-winning CEO series. I think many of you have seen that. They've also featured one of my portfolio companies, Analyst Investors and Hallow, on their CEO series. And they've had in-depth interviews with CEOs talking about their personal journeys and business experience. The CEO series can be found on Cheddar, Entrepreneur Magazine, Reach TV, and really want to thank Salvi Media for their support of the podcast. You can also follow them on social media, as well as they have a podcast studio in Chicago. Join them as well. So again, thank you, Salvi Media, for making this podcast possible. Today with us, we have Dr. Alejandro Badia, who's a hand and upper limb surgeon, founder of OrthoNOW, entrepreneur, and an amazing leader in the very cool Miami area. That I had the opportunity to be at his home, beautiful home, a couple weeks back. Dr. Alejandro, welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast.
Thank you, David. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So, hey, we chat on exponential growth trends. How do you think about investing? And then, how do you lead in this environment of all this exponential growth change? But today we're going to talk about healthcare, your background, because you have an entrepreneurial background, you have a surgeon background. So you have coming at it from that lens. Let's start off though with your story. I know some of your story. Obviously, there's more to it, but share with us your amazing story.
Sure. Well, I'm a proud immigrant. I was born in Cuba. My father's family still lives in Valencia, Spain. He moved to Cuba after the Spanish Civil War. Met my mom there. Long lineage of physicians in my family, which I learned about when I wrote my book. So I was born in Havana. Castro came. I left, settled in the second enclave of Cubans, which a lot of people don't know, is northern or central New Jersey. So I went to public school all the way through in Elizabeth. Great childhood, real melting pot. I do cherish that. Big Latino population, a lot of Cubans, a lot of Colombians, big diversity. And then I went to a place that was a little bit different for me. I did my undergraduate work at Cornell. And, I had never seen like blue blazers and khaki slacks and things like that before. So it was a really
farmland and a lot of farmland too, I guess, right?
Up there and around the Lake Cayuga. Yeah, it was, but it was an idyllic place. I went there 2 summers for swim camp. So I was a swimmer. I remember walking on the arts quad, and frankly, I never had an inkling that I would get in, but I was a very driven pre-med student since I was, 8 years old. So this has been a lifelong pursuit of mine. And I guess when you're that focused, things work out. So I had a great undergrad education in physiology and then went to medical school at NYU, stayed there for orthopedic, and which I loved because a lot of my training was at Bellevue, where, you learn you can operate out of a paper bag when you finish in a place like that, big trauma center. Then I went to Pittsburgh. Then I went to Germany with an awarded fellowship. And then I came to Mecca for Cubans, which is Miami. I wanted to go somewhere where I'd use my Spanish. Co-founded the Miami Hand Center. That was in '95. So I'm actually celebrating this October 30 years in the practice of medicine after residency. So I've been a physician for 35 years. Then I realized I wanted to pursue care delivery a little bit different than my partners were. I saw a lot of opportunity, and 4 of us kind of were disgruntled with kind of the lead guy, and then I was the first one to break off. And when that happened, the other guys left within a year, and we're we're all still here in Miami and get along. Some of us still do some work together, in fact. And then you know, I was solo for until 6 months ago. But I did 15 years ago, within a few years of starting my practice, I started OrthoNOW, and I'm sure you'll want to get into that as well.
Yeah, no, okay, great story. And, and I think too, it's like the hands and the legal event they're so important for everything. It's like you don't realize how important they are until something goes wrong with them.
Something goes wrong, yeah. That's a beautiful organ of function, and yeah.
Oh yeah, no, just amazing. So now, healthcare and exponential growth trends. What in your view, what do you think are the top two or three, exponential growth trends or trends enabled by technology that are happening in healthcare right now that kind of are most top of mind for you, or should be most top of mind for everybody who's listening to this podcast?
Well, I mean, you can't touch on that subject without mentioning AI, right? I mean, AI already is disrupting, radiology, differential diagnosis of, plugging in things. But, in the end, physicians, well, both physicians and patients really cherish the caring part. And let me tell you, I thank God I don't know, yet, knock on wood, but the day you have a really, really bad illness or, a malignancy or something, let me tell you, you don't want a robot. Okay, you want somebody who's empathetic, who cares, who has a command of the literature, understands the trends, will use technology and tools, but in the end you need people to care about you. And I think I'm afraid we're kind of losing that for other things that we'll get into in this discussion. But I think that AI is going to be critical. I think biologics, we're seeing that already in so many areas, meaning being able to treat things with basically biologic remedies, meaning not external drugs, but actually using the body. So, for example, people know about PRP, right? Platelet-rich plasma that, comes, there's all these growth factors in your platelets, and then more concentrated growth factors that I use a lot in my practice just because they're even more powerful. And I don't have to draw your blood. And then there's, of course, the traditional stem cells, which is
Yeah,
a little bit overblown. So one of the
yeah,
problems in healthcare is that the media, sadly, has never done a good job, in my opinion, of really focusing on educating people about, evidence-based, effective healthcare, except in
yeah,
select areas, right? Obesity, maybe the heart, cardiology, the obsession with plastic surgery, complete obsession with aesthetic surgery. And let me tell you, when you've got pain somewhere, or you have a chronic illness, you don't really care about tummy tucks and facelifts, right? And
right,
and yet
right.
the media has done that. So I think that there's a lot of therapies that are currently being used that the public hasn't been educated well on. And I think, David, one of my passions is really patient education and trying to
Yeah,
explain it at a patient level and not dumbing it down. I mean, people are very smart. You just have to, it's like when a financial guy talks to me, right? I go to your conferences and, I have to ask the guy next to me, like, hey, what does that mean? But I'm smart enough to learn, and patients are
right,
that way too. So I,
right.
I really believe I just wish that I could find a media outlet that really cared about this, because it's a big problem, because with education comes good healthcare. With good healthcare comes cost savings. And
Yeah,
that healthcare is almost 20% of our US GDP, which is completely out of control. So there are
yeah,
things that we can do to fix that. And I think areas to invest in are areas where we can be more cost effective. So I
yeah,
just recently in LinkedIn, I just put out an article about joint replacement in the ASC, the ambulatory surgery center space. Much
yeah,
more cost effective than a hospital.
yeah.
So those are areas, for example, to invest in. Um, there's so much, but again, I think there, like other areas, you have to be educated. I put zero money into crypto. Why? I don't understand it, and
Mhm.
I find it hard to invest to understand. And healthcare is a little complicated. So I urge the listeners to educate yourself about certain areas in healthcare before you put money in it.
So yeah, so on that point, you hit on two areas that, I just like you, I know enough to be dangerous. like, on the financial side, you say, hey, I whisper one. So there are a couple of things like, so stem cells, let's just dig a little bit deeper there, right? So I've heard, you're using stem cells to potentially do some regenerative stuff on limbs and joints and things like that. I don't know if it's AI that looks at my picture and they give me ads for hair,
Yeah,
like use
probably, yeah.
stem cells for hair. AI is pretty slick. I can say, oh, look at this bald guy picture, and then they're shooting me, all these bald remedies. They say, oh,
Yeah.
don't try surgery, go stem cell, right? But give our listeners, like, let's just double click on stem cells and kind of, what do you see? What are the kind of, how do they work? What are the areas that it's being used for? And
Yeah.
just where do you see of its potential, and kind of how can you see it growing longer term, staying the
Sure.
same?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the stem cell?
Yeah. So what we're talking about is what we call pluripotential stem cells, which are cells that are really embryonic, that haven't differentiated or haven't changed into that particular tissue type. So you can't just get injections of stem cells without somebody who's really knowledgeable helping to get those cells to turn into or differentiate into tissue you want. We are sort of on the cusp of seeing that in terms of potentially joint cartilage um, being created for arthritis, which is definition, right? Let's just take osteoarthritis. It's nobody knows. Whoever, a friend of mine asked me just the other day, I injected his shoulder with growth factors, and he was saying that, why can't I grow back cartilage? Because he has. I said, well, I'd have a Nobel Prize. Whoever understands why we develop osteoarthritis will get a Nobel Prize. The stem cells we're using there, once it's advanced, I can tell you that is not going to work, because there are bone spurs, there are all kinds of secondary issues to the loss of cartilage. We do know that if we get to it early in focal areas, very small defined areas, we can place stem cells and get some growth of articular cartilage. Many times we take that and then we grow it in culture and then put it in. So the fact is that one of the top people in the world about this is in Chicago. We lectured together in South Africa last year, and I also asked him a lot of these questions because he knows more about this area than I do.
Yeah. I mean, he lives it
And
every day, right?
but so I can tell you, stem cells, I've done both mesenchymal bone marrow derived, meaning it comes from your bone marrow, and there's a lot of controversy about which is the best ones. It really is. The other one that I've been using now, and I put this out there because people may want to ask me about this. The ones I'm using now is taking it from fat, and then you fractionate it, and you take those lipocytes, and there are stem cells in there. But I really don't believe, in most clinicians, serious clinicians, don't believe that that's turning into tendon, rotator cuff. I'm going to speak about what I do because I don't follow knee, right? But I use it in shoulder. I use it in elbow a bit. What is vital are the growth factors. So I believe that a lot of the effect of stem cells is the 30 to 40 some odd growth factors that are in that. And there's too many to list.
Yeah.
But those do promote healing of the body. So what you're doing is you're taking these, what we call orthobiologics, because it's in a musculoskeletal system, and you're taking that and you're regenerating. Now, there's a company I'm currently using that's actually very near my office in Doral, based here, founded when I came to Miami 30 years ago. It was by an eye surgeon. So this doctor started using it for cornea, for corneal abrasions. I mean, literally, this guy, his whole field is a cornea. Could you imagine? Like,
Yeah. Well, I'm
that's
sure.
all he
Yeah.
does. I mean,
Yeah,
people think
specialist.
hand is specific. Believe me,
Yeah.
hand's not that specific. This guy's really special. And then about 5 years ago, they started doing a lot of same things, including actually a tissue that comes from basically umbilical cord and placenta, because that is full. And obviously there are all ethical issues, there's regulations, and they follow that. There's only a handful of companies in the country who are actually FDA approved for that. So I visited them. It's pretty amazing. People in hazmat suits and under these hoods, and they're dissecting out tissue, and then I've used the tissue to actually help promote healing, where I don't just inject, but sometimes I actually lay down tissue on top of repair sites.
Oh, wow.
Pretty amazing stuff. So these are the things that are on the horizon that I think that investors could certainly look at. Yeah.
Got it. So yeah, no, really, really cool, cool areas, and and more to come, right? I mean, there's
Oh
so
yeah.
many advances that are happening rapidly there in that space. So healthcare industry, right? You said 20% of roughly our GDP is spent on healthcare, and it's increasing at a I don't know what, 7, 6, 8% year over year or so. I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, just a number of years ago, we were about 16%. So, I think we're about 19.2. It depends on
yeah.
who you read, but it's definitely, it's approaching 20%, and it's just not sustainable.
So so if you had a magic wand, I know you've been doing some, work up in DC, up and down some of the halls in Congress and stuff like that. But what do you like? What are the like if you were to come up with two succinct
Pain points.
recommendations on what needs to happen to make that to fix that problem, what do you recommend? Two, and I'd say
So,
two, maybe three. We'll go max three,
well,
but two.
actually, I'd almost like to focus on one. It's actually
Okay.
not that difficult. It's really not that difficult. We have medicine is probably one of the only industries where we are just overladen with middlemen. There are too many middlemen. So now you saw Mark Cuban has been a huge proponent for this, right? I mean, talk about a tech guy, right? And he's grabbed the whole, bull by the horns for PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. If you wonder why prescription drugs are so expensive in this country, going, to a Walgreens or a CVS, especially if you don't have insurance, it's because there are these middlemen, and they really add very little to the equation. I mean, they really do. We rag on the pharmaceutical companies, and yes, there's some blame there, but the reality is we need them because they invest a lot of money in developing drugs, and bringing a drug to market is $100 million now for
Oh
something
yeah, yeah, yeah,
routine.
no.
For something
Clinical
routine.
trials,
Yeah.
phases of clinical trials, and
So we saw that relaxed a little bit during COVID, and I'm hoping with the current climate in Washington, where we're getting, I think hopefully we're getting rid of some nonsense, whether you agree or not politically, but we are certainly trying to simplify things, and we need that in healthcare. And I'm actually surprised that we haven't seen Elon come after healthcare, because I mean, that is low hanging fruit. There are all kinds of people. Let's take this one word that the public hates, and doctors: authorization, pre-authorization. I mean, think about what an inane concept that is. That somebody comes to see me. I'm not just an orthopedic surgeon. I'm a specialist of this. So say you come to me with shoulder pain. I examine you. Plain x-rays are normal. Your pain is severe. I know in that case you need an MRI. All right. And believe me, that's a very over-ordered test. But in this case, I'm the expert. Why do I have to wait for somebody at Blue Cross or United Healthcare to give my secretary and put her on hold, of course, right?
yeah,
Put her on hold, and then to give her a number for somebody who couldn't even name the four tendons of the rotator cuff,
yeah,
right? I mean, we're in 2025. There's AI. What are we doing? I mean, what are we doing?
right,
Because that person has a salary, benefits, health insurance. Unfortunately, they have all these things that cost money, right?
yeah,
They're superfluous. Now we do need oversight, and in my own podcast, which I haven't done for some time now, but I always mention my 3 points. And one of the things I say is we need oversight, not authorization. Right.
yeah.
So in TSA, right? Didn't we years ago we came up with TSA? What do they call it? I should know. You
No,
get
I don't even know what I'm almost like 2 million miles. I don't even know what the hell TSA stands
you
for.
get to go right through, right? They don't
Yeah, I
screen
just know I'm
everything.
good. I got the fast track in
Yeah,
general.
I mean, that's the way it should be in healthcare, right? I mean, if once a practitioner, at all levels, right? My ortho PA knows more about hand than my buddy, the spine surgeon, and his PA knows more about the spine than I do, right?
Right.
I mean, so all of and a skilled nurse or a nurse practitioner, right? All of these people know their area. We don't need somebody sitting at a desk for an insurance company that they think they're saving money. What we do need is oversight, right? So we need
So you'd say one lever is these big insurance companies have these bloated bureaucratic folks that put a lot of, because of their hurdles and the
Yes.
time, and it's like
Yeah.
the inefficiency, because there's a charge for them to do that. Somebody's paying them to, all that bureaucracy.
And the
So
delay,
one is
we
like
don't
kind of,
talk about that. We
Yeah.
talk about, I mean, Luigi brought a lot of this to light, right? But it's not just with care being denied, because the reality, care is often not denied. And that's a stupidity, the whole thing, right? I mean, if TSA, found 2 guns a year, right? We'd get rid of them probably, right? But, they don't. So obviously we need them. But with the approvals, most of the times things are approved, but they're approved weeks to months in. And with AI, it should be nanoseconds.
yeah,
right?
definitely.
I mean, shoulder pain, spit out, MRI. That's the most cost, rather than actually ordering therapy, which the insurance company makes you do, to then go ahead and do a rotator cuff repair anyway 3 months later, and then they need therapy again. You see,
Right.
So let the practitioner decide what is best and what is cost effective for their patient.
Yeah, and then I mean they still have a deductible or other things like that, so they're in general, right? So so that's a good one. Any other kind of big levers you think that would kind of make some start to bend that curve, that 20% curve, and get it more reasonable?
Well, seeing the right clinician at the right time. And notice I didn't say doctor, because many times, I mean, my daughter had a bad strep throat, right? Sent me a picture, and I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I mean, I did work in the ER a little bit to make some money in New York, but it doesn't matter. Any physician is going to be able to diagnose strep pharyngitis without taking a culture, looking at it. And if you don't get better in a few days with antibiotics, and then you got to. So bottom line is, you don't have to always do it, but a primary care nurse practitioner or PA would very well know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so you got to see the right person. And I can tell you, one of the reasons I started OrthoNOW was that I was typically the 4th physician seeing a patient would say wrist pain. I mean, wrist pain is a very specific thing. You really got to understand the wrist. So, general urgent care, maybe they'll send them to ER. The ER sends them to the orthopedist. The orthopedist says, whoa, I'm good with knees. I don't do, but you got to go to Badia. Well, all those 3 other physicians sent bills in, right? As they should. It's their time. But why not funnel people to the right clinician early on? And that really is not happening. I mean, there was a terrible idea to do this gatekeeper thing. I mean, gatekeeper, it implies that somebody's actually, it's like I hate in Miami, the velvet rope, right? You go to they have those in Chicago. I can't stand this, right? So it's like having a busy physician as a velvet rope, saying, "Well, I got money to go into the club, and I'm old enough, and I know how to dance. Let me in." Right? Well, the patient wants to see somebody, and they say, "Jesus, my wrist hurts me. Let me see the wrist specialist." And that right there would save money. This gatekeeper. So what the primary care doctors should be doing, which we need more of, is preventive medicine, right? They've got to screen and keep us healthy, and say, oh, you've been having wrist pain for a week. I don't know about, go see Badia. That's all he does, right? That's what should be happening. But let me see your blood sugar again in 60 days and make sure. That's what needs to be done, because that will keep them out of the ER, and getting into dialysis or having, vision problems or atherosclerosis. I mean, that's what primary care they shouldn't be gatekeepers or velvet rope men.
Yeah. No, interesting. No,
that has a cost, right? I mean, a huge cost.
Well, yeah, and you think about these emergency rooms, right? They're packed, and people just go to the emergency room. It's a zoo. Some of these emergency rooms are like a zoo. And a lot of, I don't know what the number is. Let's say the 30-40%, I believe, probably could just, clinician or somebody could really help handle them.
Yeah, more than that. I mean, ER, you have chest pain, ER. you break your femur, right? I mean, you don't go to an OrthoNOW, but I know we have people limping in with ankle fractures. The busy ER doctor doesn't want to be dealing with that. They've got a kid with asthma who's about to expire if they don't intubate them, or again, grandma with a hip fracture who's has to have cardiology clearance and has to be admitted. We're not doing hip fractures in outpatient because they have associated medical problems. That's what ERs are for. And that was, but yet, I can tell you, David, the investing community didn't, although lately people are knocking on my door, ironically, but, for a long time I was pitching OrthoNOW, and what everybody cared about was what the EBITDA was. I don't know. I mean, I'm reading Steve Jobs' story. I'll tell you, if I walked into his garage and I saw what him and Woz and the other Steve were doing, I don't care what their EBITDA is.
Yeah.
Right? I would, right?
Yeah.
Right. And that's what's happened with OrthoNOW. People don't understand that the real opportunities in healthcare are the cost-effective ways to deliver it.
Yeah. Well, the other one was too is Amazon. If you remember back to Amazon, they weren't profitable for, I think, for roughly 20 years, and every quarterly conference call was kind of like, I don't want to say like a joke, like, well, when are they going to get profitable? Oh, they're saying they're still building. And Wall Street's giving them some time and patience, and Wall Street didn't like it that they're still building, they're not profitable, and it was like 20 years, and Bezos kept saying, building out the infrastructure, I'm building this stuff out, and he just kept, and he could trust me, it's gonna come, and obviously now they're freaking $3 trillion.
So are you trying to make me feel better after 15 years of OrthoNOW that there's we should, we will have one in every community, at least
no, there's
5.
still you still got, hey, who knows, right? There's still more to come. Maybe that's the next adventure for Dr. Badia. We'll see. I mean, you have one or two good ones in you at least. Well, cool. Dr. Badia, thanks for sharing the perspectives. How would people get connected with you? I know you have a book, so maybe talk a little bit about your book. I know your podcast is out, but maybe give a little bit there. And then how do people stay connected? Because you're putting a lot of good thoughts and insights in the space. How do they stay connected with you?
Yeah, well, it's, I mean, that's nowadays, thank God, that's easy. But it's amazing how many people will not use, for example, my website. I mean, you can reach right on the website, drbadia.com. So drbadia.com. Right there, it says, Ask Dr. Badia. In fact, we recently moved the button. We made it bigger. We made it yellow. Like, click on it. You're gonna get an answer from me. I mean, and so that is really the easiest way. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn as actually Dr. Badia, and then my social media has been interesting because I really find it's an incredibly efficient way to teach people. People have shorter attention spans. I'd love to see more people read my book, but when I make some of these comments about healthcare or about wrist or shoulder pain in 60 seconds, it's amazing how much engagement that gets. So, my, I think most of my social media is under Badia Hand, one word, Badia Hand. But what I would really love to see people do, not just because if they want to invest or not because they think healthcare is kind of important, but because it is 20% of our economy. My book is called Healthcare from the Trenches, and frankly, the biggest challenge is really for people taking the time to read it, because when people do read it, if you look at the reviews, they're pretty darn good. In fact, the only negative ones I've had have been from a couple fellow physicians that were like, that's the other problem with us doctors too, is we don't play well together in the sandbox, so everybody kicks our butt. But I think that if people see that, so the first section is about my story. I didn't tell the story about my grandmother who had rheumatoid arthritis, so I'm going to leave that to the listeners. It's on like page 2, and it talks
you got to pick up, for those listening, you got to pick up the book if you want to read about this great story. You got to pick up the book.
It's a nice story. It's grandmother was immigrant, and the thing that inspired me, not only for as a physician, but even ultimately as a hand surgeon, which I didn't realize at the time. But that the book does not really pretend to solve the problem. It's not. I'm trying to explain to people what healthcare with delivering healthcare in the trenches, not as a pundit on, CNN or Fox News or something, but somebody who actually sees patients and what the problems are, but who's aware of it. Not a lot of doctors, thank God, right? They're focused on their patients, and that's what we should be doing. But there are a few crazies out there like me who'd say, like, this doesn't make sense. So I wrote the book, and then afterwards people were like, well, how do we fix it? And I said, well, I'm not that smart, but I have some ideas, and I'm going to get some really smart people on my podcast to together come up. So the podcast is called Fixing Healthcare from the Trenches. And and even though I haven't had a new episode in a few months now, for a number of reasons, there's 42 episodes. Senator Bill Cassidy was on there. Greg Murphy's the only practicing surgeon in Congress from District 2, North Carolina. Obviously, those are powerful because they're both physicians. Tom Price, former HHS secretary before RFK. Tom was a guest. And we really talk about some discrete, tangible steps that we can take to fix it.
Well, and those are some, leaders, in our government and who have a perspective on it, who live and breathe it every day, and they're in circles with people who are hitting them from different sides on this area. So for those who are listening, check out the podcast, and we'll see. Hopefully there'll be, some more episodes coming up here. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Badia, thank you. Thanks for taking the time, jumping on the Exponential Growth podcast. You can check him out on LinkedIn. You heard about his book, his website. Visit the website and stay connected with him. Thank you, Dr. Badia.
Thank you. Would love to hear from people, and it takes a village, right, to fix big problems, and I think we can do it. So thank you to Angelus Investors.
Thanks all.